Welcome everyone to a bonus episode of Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. Joining me today is Beth Pilkington, linebacker for the Great Britain's women's team, Leeds Chargers and Yorkshire Academy Rams. Beth, you've been on before, so welcome back. Thanks ever so much for coming back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. We're going to catch up mainly about what's been going on from a Great Britain women's perspective as you're halfway through your 2023-2024 European Championships campaign. Catch up with everything else as well, and we can even have a chat about how your NFL team's been doing as well. But you're kind of in the middle right now, sort of kind of your 3 seasons, is that right, in terms of your 3 teams that you play for? So first of all, how are you doing kind of being in the middle of all that?
Yeah, good. I mean, all of the seasons hit at the same time, which is, can be a bit frustrating, but we deal with it. So yeah, with the Leeds Chargers, we have one game as the standard, and then we'll have our semi-finals and finals. How the structure works, we have made it through to the semis because there's 5 teams, and Peterborough sadly have lost 2 games. So I'm pretty confident that we're going to make it through. It's just now that the standing of it. I would love us going into the seedings to be third. So we're playing Edinburgh Wolves on our next game. So that's mid-July. Wolves are a great team. Like, they've come up and surprised us. They put up decent points against the London Warriors, who are like top of the league and great team. So they, I think, have come in and surprised a few people. They'll be playing Birmingham Lions this Saturday, so that'll be an interesting score to see what happens there. But yeah, we've got, I'd say we're about halfway through. Like I said, really would like to come third in that, so that we will be dealing with probably the Lions based off of the standings at the moment. But you just never know, do you, in playoffs and things like that, with a couple of games to go. Anything could happen, really.
Well, that's true. Once you get to kind of that business end of the season,
Yeah,
surprises can happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And then how then are you? So I know that Yorkshire Rams have started off their season. So I think last time we talked was back in April. So I think it was the week before the Rams were about to start. I know it's been a bit chaotic in terms of a lot of cancelled games or team that have dropped out, meaning they've not played a lot of games. How was that start to the season been?
Yeah, so that was frustrating, for the Rams. So like you said, it was chaotic. So, we had a game in April. So I think it was like the week before maybe, so it was like the start of April. And then we didn't play another game until like 2-3 weeks ago because of like teams dropping out and how the fixtures lay. And it was difficult because having that length of time off for conditioning wise, isn't great. And I think the Rams probably ended up with the worst schedule based off of it because we had such a large gap, and then it'll be like game for like a good few weeks. So our kind of like bye weeks are a little bit non-existent, and that's quite difficult, where other teams had, maybe had 2-3 weeks off in between games, where we had like 6 weeks or something stupid. To expect a team to kind of bounce back and hit the ground running coming up against Vikings, who I would say are the best team in the league. That was our intro game, like a welcome back game. So essentially it's like we'd restarted the season because our first game was against a team which was struggling, Darlington's team, that, they were struggling. We kind of knew that. They give it the big uns on podcasts and stuff before, which I appreciated. Okay. But yeah, it was pretty funny. I enjoyed it. But it ended up being about 50-0 to the Rams, and then we were meant to have another game against them kind of before towards the end of our small hiatus. But they pulled out and cited weather. Like, the pitch was flooded, even though it had been boiling hot for like days. So that was a bit unusual.
Right. Okay.
So there was, there was some chaos around that. So it was just difficult. And then to go straight into a game against the Vikings, who were like conditioned and prepared, was great, where, it's really hard to keep a team like fighting at 100% when there's such a long break in between things. I think it's unrealistic for anyone to think that, you know, you're always going to keep going, because you lose a little bit of motivation. You're like, well, I'm not playing for 6 weeks. They're like, what am I up to here?
Yeah, especially the nature of the sport, isn't it? That reps are key, and especially, you know, when live rounds are going in terms of game time.
Yeah.
And it is such a long gap to go through of kind of getting you to position. I mean, what did you? I mean, that's an interesting insight point, I guess, as well. So as a team, I know for yourself, as you play for a couple of other teams, I assume a lot of the other guys potentially might play for a university side or something as well.
Yes.
But for the bulk, what was the approach then to try and stay sharp over that kind of 6-7 week period where all your games have suddenly gone?
Yeah, so you've got to kind of focus on yourselves and how the Rams kind of, like, you know, propositioned it was, this is like really great time to like focus on us. So like get all of the playbook stuff and all of our fundamentals like drilled down, so that then throughout the rest of the season we can focus then on, like, you know, adjustments that we've got to make. So like we're not still installing like mid-season, because that it happens, you know, it's hard to install full playbooks. And, you know, we had a new DC, so that was like a full new defensive playbook. And, you know, that's always a bit of a challenge in itself. So it was very much, you know, focus on us and make sure that we're doing everything that we can do. But, you know, I think it's more than fair that, you know, not everyone was engaged for the full period of time. We did pick up numbers like quite a lot towards the kind of second half of the break, where people were like, actually, no, we're back in. And like, you know, the team was talking and saying we need to get back into it. And that's kind of what happened. For me, I'd probably have tried to focus a little bit more on the games upcoming a bit earlier than we did, but then that's why I'm not a head coach. So it kind of works out, doesn't it, in that way? But yeah, it was definitely trying to focus on us and making sure we're getting things right, like tackling. So, you know, we don't miss a lot of tackles because we've got that practice in now. Like, we've got good fundies, so that, you know, that puts us in a really good position. But still, going into a game, it's hard when you're playing against the same people, because you know your teammates. So like,
yeah,
we'll know how to train and win against our own teammates because we play with them so much. So then having fresh, you know, teams come in, so when we're actually going in games, it is different. It is hard because you've got to adjust. Like, you come a little bit too understanding of your own teammates with that length of period, and almost like backing yourself a little bit too much, because you're like, well, I can you know, do this route, like, you know, this is what they're good at, we know our own playbook. So yeah, it was hard. And then like we said, we went straight into Vikings game, and I think we did pretty well. I feel pretty confident going into the next one against them. I think they scouted us really well, and, you know, they clearly have really good coaches, and it was the exact same for Alphas. Like, Alphas almost knew what we were doing before we were doing it. So they had clearly spent a lot of time. And again, like, their coaches are great. They've got a really good HC. They've got some really intelligent, like, long-standing players. The team itself are still quite young, but the players that they've got, some of them are really, really great players. And it's clear that they knew what we were going to do, and they scouted that. And it was our own mistakes that let us down. And it wasn't that necessarily they were the better team. It was on us. So we've kind of got to pull it out of the bag. We're playing them next week. So it's back-to-back games, because why wouldn't that be scheduled, you know? Yeah. So we've got that coming up. And, you know, the lads are feeling confident going into it. And I'm feeling confident for them.
Yeah, so that game's Sunday, right, down at Southleaf Stadium.
John Charles,
yeah. We'll be there. I say we'll be there. I'll be there. I'm going to come down and watch this weekend. I followed the game Sunday. I was following it on. So whoever was running the Rams Twitter account on Sunday, is that you?
No, it was Pid. He's much cheekier than I.
Yeah, it was brilliant to follow along with, but clearly not a big fan of how the refs chose to officiate the game on Sunday. We're not here to bash the refs, but clearly that was a trend in the update.
Yeah, there was some very debatable calls, and, you know, I'm not one to bash refs and blame refs. And whenever I say, oh, the refs were, you know, god awful or whatever I'll complain about, I always kind of caveat with saying like we can't rely on like the best call, like the perfect rest calls to win the game. But there were some where it was just, I just couldn't understand why it was called. So there's, a couple of examples that I can say where, Alphas, they were short. Our defense kept them out, and you could see the ball carrier get stood up by our nose tackle and pushed back, so he didn't get over the line. The line judge that was closest didn't call it. Like the head ref didn't call it, but the line judge furthest away was like, this feels right. And we're like, you can't even see the ball. Like, you like, how? So, just, and then when it was on the other foot and Taylor was in the end zone, like hand over, ball is placed, they were like, no. And we were like, So just, stuff like that's a little bit frustrating, because that would have made the game pretty much even. And that's a big turn of events. And, Rams really started to pick it up towards, really, I would say the third and fourth quarter, we really came into it, but just little things would just drag us back, and silly calls by refs. And when we were asking questions, they weren't answering them. And our coaches were getting frustrated because they just didn't know what was happening on the field. They were saying, well, what's the call? And like, no one would speak to them. So yeah, there was, it was frustrating, but I guess it's the committee that I've got to kind of deal with that and put that report in, but it doesn't change the result. So we've got to leave it behind us. We can whinge all we want, but I say what I say with we can't rely on the refs to win a game for us. We've got to make sure that we're putting it more convincingly.
I suppose now the Rams are in a position kind of where probably need to run the table now.
Yeah, so we're 2-2, but that's because one of them was a walkover, I think. But we've only played 4 games, so most of the teams have played like 7, 8. So it might not look great initially, but it's just because of the games we've played. But I would have always said the harder games that I was expecting, and I'd said it from the offset, was Alphas and Vikings, and we've played half of them games already, and I'm feeling all right going into the second half of them. I think people have underestimated the Alphas across the league because they come up from D2, but they were never a D2 team. They were a D1 team, like a convincing D1 team that was just in a D2 fixture because of how old the team is basically and COVID. So it's a bit, it doesn't look great initially, but 4 games technically played, and we've not really had the chance to kind of show where we're at.
Yeah. I suppose it's the second half of the season to be able to do that and hit a good run of form.
For sure.
Speaking of being halfway through, you're halfway through, and the GB women's team are halfway through their 2023-2024 European Championships campaign. You've played kind of the first 2 games already, Sweden at home and Germany away. Before we get kind of into the details of the games and how they were, how's it been for you kind of playing in the European Championship so far?
Yeah, it's been great. I would say I've enjoyed it the most out of the other tournaments that I've played, but it's been, it's been strange. Like, I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed the team's atmosphere. I've enjoyed the sport within the UK because it feels like people are really starting to back their national teams now, where I don't think, especially during the Euros in 2019, it felt like quite unknown. It was in Leeds and we couldn't fill John Charles Stadium. And it's not a huge stadium. We couldn't fill that, where, we got over 800 people down at Worcester. So it's definitely taken, a massive stride. And I enjoy the support, and I enjoy, people message me and talk about it and say like, oh my God, I've seen you on this, or, I've seen this. And that's really, great for me as an individual and for the sport and for the team to kind of get that support across the board. A lot of youth players want to talk to like the girls on the national program, and we make sure that we find the time to speak to as many people as we can, because we're trying to grow the sport, so we've got to put the time in. And I really enjoy it personally. I think it's really nice when people want to know what you do and what how it impacts you and how you kind of like base your life and things like that, as they're coming up into, some of them are like 14, 15, 16. So they're really at a great age to be getting into it and to be working their way through to the national programs. So yeah, it's been really good. We kind of got what I would say was the worst kind of 2 games. Like we had 3 options to not choose from, but they give us 3 options where the games would be. So it was April, May, and August. And we got April and May. So we kind of got like the earliest of, and like both the early kind of games. So that was quite difficult. I think I mentioned it last time where we tried to onboard a lot more new players and get them ready to play. And again, we don't play 11s in the UK for women's. So people are coming to trials having never even kind of like stepped on 11's field. So we've been trying to get people ready. And then they said, oh, fun surprise, you've actually only got 3 months until your first game. So we had to change the original lookout and put some girls that had made it through the squad onto like a bit of like a holding pattern almost for when we can like concentrate to develop them, because it was actually, we've got to get through the next couple of games. So yeah, I would have loved like a May and an August, or even like an April and an August, so that we can get more. Because it was a quick old turnaround, let me tell you that.
And that transition that you mentioned, so obviously you've made that transition, right, from playing 7 aside, 9 aside as well, right, and then to 11 aside. Yeah. How has it been then for this kind of most recent intake of players then for the national team? How has it been for them to make that switch and transition so quickly?
Yeah. So we did have quite a few rookies come through that were selected for the travel squad. So that's like awesome work for them. We have really good coaches who explain things a lot better. And because we're on the national squad, we have like dedicated coaches to each position. So it's not as overwhelming where it would be at club level, where you've only got sometimes 2, 3, 4 coaches. So it meant that, every single positional unit have that dedicated person, or sometimes we've got 2 of them there to like talk them through the differences, especially on like space and like knowledge of how it kind of changes a little bit, and especially on the special teams element. So 9s, the Prem teams in women's are now at 9, so we do have special teams, but it's the first year that it's been in the women's sport. So again, that's like a big change for a lot of girls, because we're just missing previously like just a full third of a game. So it was really strange, especially the year before, like people coming in and being like, what on earth are we doing? And we're running a punt and they're like, I have no idea, because they've just never done it before. And that's absolutely fair. So you can tell that girls are really getting like more used to it now. And with 9s, the space happens because we're on the standard size pitch now. So it definitely helps, but you've just got to find the right coaches that have the patience and understanding to help the girls through it. And luckily we've got that. Some girls don't kind of know what position they play, especially if they come from like a 7s team, because they'll play like a middle linebacker, but a middle linebacker in their playbook is an outside linebacker or like nickel position. So it's kind of fun watching like people be like, I'm this nose position. It's like, you're a defensive end. Like, let's just move you on out. Like, so yeah, it's been strange, but we've clearly got great coaches and great athletes for, rookies to come in and play at international games and get reps there as well.
Yeah. Cool. And you mentioned the first game was the home game against Sweden. 800 people were there. And I managed to watch some of the game and saw some of the clips as well, which is insane, great support. How was it like playing in front of 800 people who come to pay to watch you?
Yeah, it was mad, because like you don't hear that much, especially like before, like you just hear noise, like you can't really figure it out when you're in the changing rooms. And like we went out to warm up and like people had started to come in, so like you can kind of like see who's there, like spot your mates or whatever. I saw a couple of people I knew, but like you don't talk to them, like you kind of like keep your head in game mode, because as soon as like you're like looking around and like you see your grandma or whatever, you kind of lose it a little bit. So we do try and like keep our heads, but it's kind of hard when like they're all behind you. But then as soon as it goes like actual game time, like they announced the defensive starters. So like for me, that was awesome. Like my name got called out. That was like one of the best moments of like my life, let's face it. And like, it's just the noise of it. Like people were going out and you could hear all the shouting and screaming. And it was just like, it was mental. We stood on the opposite sideline. So sadly, Sweden had all of the chaos and screams and noise behind them, but we could see the support. And like, that was that was awesome, because every single time something good would happen, like it was so loud. I was surprised at how loud it was, because, you know, Six Ways is a big stadium, but it was just so noisy. Like, we could hear it, it echoed through. So it was so nice to get that support. And obviously it was streamed, and like the streams, there's loads on the stream, on the views as well. And we got so many messages after it. Like, I was quite overwhelmed. I think I had to put my phone down for a couple of days, because I was like, I don't even know how to like handle this. Like, so yeah, it was amazing. And, you know, we've got we'll have a home game in August 2024. So we're hoping for kind of bigger and better numbers there, because people have come down and they really enjoyed it. And everyone said, like, I've not heard anyone that was like, that was boring. Like, everyone was there and talking to the friends afterwards, and having your friends after it as well. It's just like awesome. Like, your friends and family are all there. Like, they're so proud of you. And sometimes you could hear like one of them scream something weird when it was quiet, you know. So it was just awesome. It was such just a great weekend.
Cool, good stuff. And the game itself, it was a pretty comprehensive win for
Yes.
Great Britain team. Yeah, how was it then playing against Sweden, and what did you take out of that game then heading into the second one?
So there was still lots to learn. Like we said, you know, it was what, 40-0, I think it was. So we won, you know, like, you know, we weren't sweating about it. But you kind of come away and you look at the film, and you have to then pick up on the things that we could have done better, or, you know, we did wrong, or we, you know, ran something not as it should have been ran. So we got straight on to film review. So the next day, so we played on the Saturday, and we had film review Sunday morning. So the coaches were like, you know, we have another game in 6 weeks. So like, we could either pat ourselves on the back and be like, awesome work, or we can now get to focus on the next game and how we can do better. And that's what we did. So we had some classroom sessions, and then we were like, draw a line in the sand. Like, we know what we need to do. So like, let's go and do it. And we had pretty heavy rotations, especially towards the second half of the Sweden game, to make sure that like everyone was getting the reps. Like, we were winning, we weren't worried about it. So like, it was like, get on our like second strings and our third strings, like make sure they have the time, because they've earned their place to be here. And even when we had like second and third strings on, like, you couldn't tell there was a dip, like there wasn't a drop in talent. So that was like awesome. I think if you look at any play, you'd think actually it was starters. I think our offense had some like settling in to do. So we had, I say a new quarterback, it wasn't a new quarterback. Ange had she's been on the squad, but it was her first year starting. So our quarterback, Sydney, she actually plays linebacker. She plays linebacker at club, and she's a starting linebacker as well. So like, she's a very decent linebacker. So she kind of made the switch. She was like, actually, I'm happier at linebacker. Angie's very, very decent, but being a quarterback on a national team, I could not imagine the pressure and the stress. And like, you know, she's expected to manage everybody as well. Like, that's just how it kind of ends up on every single team. Like, the quarterback is a leader, and Angie absolutely is a leader. She's a young pup. She's got so many more years to go. Like, we've got her for a long time if she wants that, because she's got all the skills that you need to be an international quarterback. Like, she is that person. But I think it was really difficult for her, because she had, you know, she was kind of second string during Worlds, so she didn't really get a lot of game time. So then to be, you know, thrown out into the light, that's massive. So I think we had some, like, I don't want to say teething issues, that's not the right thing, but there's still things to learn, as there is in like any kind of major position change. Like, it's the same at middle backer. That middle linebacker is expected to lead the team. So if they're not in that position and being ready for it, like, that's really difficult. And Angie, you can tell her improvements from like even the Sweden game to the Germany game is huge. She's got a cannon of like an arm. She backs herself in the run game, and she's really smart. I think like coming up to the second half of it, I think teams should be scared of her, to be perfectly honest, because she'll have the extra year behind her of being able to lead the team and having that kind of like, you know, especially the O-line, having the O-line's trust and knowledge is key. So yeah, she's really impressed a lot of people, and I'm so proud of her, because she's taken it in stride. Like, you couldn't tell. I don't know if she's ever panicked, because you definitely would never be able to tell from it.
So I suppose that piece, isn't it, of getting those reps in the games and
Yes.
competitive games as well,
Yeah.
definitely helps. So kind of
Yeah.
after the Sweden game, you mentioned kind of 6 weeks later, you guys move on to go play away in Germany. First of all, how was the experience of playing in Germany?
Yeah, it was great. You know, there's for sure pros and cons. It was the first time us as a squad have ever done something like this for a weekend. Other than like the Sweden game, but it was at home, so it was somehow different. I don't know if I can explain that, but it didn't feel the same. So that was a bit of a learning curve, I would say. So there's definitely things like from a team management perspective that I'm sure we're going to look at and work on. It's like a short amount of time, and we've like I had such a great time. Like obviously being with the girls, like I just love the team, like everything about it. The players, the coaches, like how everyone comes together, and like you have such a laugh. And like even just like in the airport, we had to be there at 4 a.m. But I still smiled a little bit seeing the girls at 4 a.m. You know, it was nice. It was hot. It was hotter than I think anyone anticipated. It was hot in England that weekend, so it meant it was even hotter in Germany. I think it's about 28 degrees maybe.
Okay, yeah, tough to
So
play.
that is yeah. So we kind of like prepared ourselves for Finland for Worlds to be warm, and like we'd had that preparation time and we knew it was going to happen, but it kind of took everyone by surprise. I think there was a heat wave, which was quite unfortunate, and you know we're not necessarily used to that kind of weather. So it was hot. Like you'd stand there and you'd sweat. So then warming up and going into a game in that was difficult. You know, we had ice rags, but you're still running around. There was no shade. There was not an inch of shade that we could find. Like it was hot. And I think looking at it, I think that impacted a lot of people's performance. Like we had people that nearly had to go to hospital because of heat exhaustion because they were like throwing up after the game because it was just so hot. So I think we probably need to prepare ourselves better for that and try and get some like heat training in there. Like I trained with my hoodie on for like weeks prior to Finland. I didn't do that for Germany because I don't think anyone expected it. So that was difficult, and that's something that we need to kind of factor in on these kind of away games and all weekends. And there was little things like everyone was so tired. So we was at the airport, Heathrow, which for the north isn't great. Thankfully, we had, you know, girls down south putting people up in their houses. So that was, you know, again, it shows the team that they are, because girls were like, yes, stay with me, it's fine. Like, don't pay for a hotel, don't drive down the night before. But, you know, being up and in an airport at 4 a.m. is like rough anyway. We checked into the hotel. We had a training session, like a bit of walkthroughs, you know, nothing ridiculous. It was gorgeous, like beautiful setting. And then it got to about 6 o'clock and we were going to watch the Finland-Spain game. So we could stream that, and we were like, let's watch this as a team. Like this can be our, you know, evening activity. So I think the game started about 6 o'clock. And people were sitting like in the hotel, like we had a room, and like they were just asleep on the chairs because people were just so exhausted. So they sent us to bed. We were going to have a classroom session on the evening, but they were like, listen, like everyone's obviously knackered, like just go to bed. And it's just little things like that you kind of don't think about. Yeah. I think you think, oh, it's you know, 7, 8 a.m. flight, great. But then the reality of it is like you're up at 2 a.m. training, traveling takes it out of you. So I think there's a lot to learn from that, and about how we as individuals, as players, we can do better, and about how, like, from a team management perspective, we can probably try and like work it a little bit better. But yeah, it was super fun, super hot. Gutted about the result.
So yeah, onto that. So it's definitely, so I suppose a bit more of a challenging game against Germany than it was against Sweden. And no disrespect, but I suppose what were the different challenges then that the German team posed in comparison to kind of the first game that you had?
Yeah, so we couldn't scout a lot for the Germany game. They had a big turnover in staff. So we just couldn't scout for them really. Like we could look at what they run locally at club, But that isn't to say that they're going to run that. So we kind of went into it a little bit blind. We knew their players, like a lot of their players. Like they have the same QB. The QB is awesome. Really, again, another just athlete, great talent player, played for a long time. I think a lot of the girls had, to be honest. Like in Germany, like football's big over there. So, they play 11s day in, day out, and they've been playing for years. And sadly, we're not quite at that stage. So they are kind of better. They've got a better understanding. And when I think about the game, I think, is there anything that we could have done better? And there's always things that you think, yeah, I probably could have, but I think we played really well. I just think that, there was a couple of things that Germany did and it worked out better for them than it did for us. I'm not concerned, and I don't think that anyone's concerned. Like our eyes are still on gold. Like the other kind of big team that we would expect to win, I say, was Finland. And the night before we watched Finland lose to Spain. So we were like, wow, okay. Like Spain, like really come in and like slapped people. And we were surprised by that. I don't know what we were expecting, but we know Finland are a really, really good team. Like we know that they come third in Worlds. They beat Canada like quite convincingly. So we were thinking like, this is going to be rough for Spain. And then Spain come out and just had an absolute belter of a game. And we were all sitting there. Well, the people that were still awake were like, wow. Like, yeah, it was surprising. So I think if Finland had won that game, I think, we'd probably be a bit worried. But the fact that Finland lost, it feels like it's anyone's game, and actually no, it's ours. We're still going to win it. We're gonna beat Spain. We're going to beat Finland. We're confident in what we're doing. We've got a lot of time now to prepare for it. So yeah, it was difficult to lose. Like I'm never going to say it wasn't. Like there were tears, and you always think what could I have done better initially. But when I look back and when we think about it, and I think a lot of my teammates have said the same, it's actually we've done as much as we can do. And I don't know if you've watched the game. Last couple plays, there's always going to be the conversation around play calling and should we have kicked? And whatever we would have done, people will always like find a way to criticize. And I think Coach Chris was right in saying, actually, we can get a yard, we can get first down, and we can make sure that we keep him out. If he would have kicked him, we would have lost. It would have been, why didn't you trust your team to get a yard? I think Coach Chris's play calling was outstanding. I think he did really, really good. And I think our players executed well. It's just one of them things that happens, and we can never do what ifs, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You talk about the game there going, and it was the barest of margins, the finest of margins. And when you're playing at the top end of a sport, sometimes it just does come down to that. And you play often enough, sometimes you're going to end up on the wrong, the bad side of it. But you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Whether to try and get the yard or to kick it, it's not. I imagine for the coaches, they're not easy decisions to make, but they'll have made what absolutely was the right decision at the time. The right decision does not always mean it comes off though. So
that's it.
You mentioned the last two, which finish off the European Championship. So it's away in Spain and then a home against Finland, isn't it? I guess the home game against Finland could be the decider of the championship. Fingers crossed it is. I mean, you've got a while and there's a bit of a gap between those games now.
Yeah.
You mentioned confident again, I suppose. What things do Great Britain need to do to put themselves in the best position to go out and finish off with 2 wins?
So I think it is now just about keeping our heads in it and keeping training and training as much as we can. And this is something that, I'd said to Coach Chris, I was like, so when are we back? We can't now sit back and be like, we've got a bit of time. Like, I want us to continue to play fluidly, because playing as individuals, like within our clubs is one thing. And we always get better in that environment, but playing together as a team is the kind of key thing. Like we've all got to be reading from the same page, and you can only do that by training together and being together. So I think, we have got sessions that we're scheduling up now. they're letting us have like a month off, a couple months off. But I think we'll be back. We had one in July, but it interrupted with some of the D1 teams' games. So they're going to reschedule that. But we'll be back like July, August. And then we've got a good amount of time. We train, every 3-4 weeks. So now it is just like making sure that we know everything and we're all doing the right things, and there'll be new talent coming in, and hopefully that'll frighten some people into like training harder, because you can get a little bit complacent when you're at the top, or when you think you're at the top, and to keep people like active and keep people like pushing the boundaries and limits of what they're at is so important. Like, we've got players on the team who you think, how can they possibly get any better? And then you see them like after a couple of months and you're like, they've done it. Like, it's mad. So I think that's the thing, and making sure that we're just executing. Like, there was a couple of just silly mistakes throughout both of the games where it's like, why did we do that? Like, what happened there? So it's like ironing out those mistakes and like making sure that we are prepared and we are ready, because by no means are either of these games going to be easy, but like I fully believe that we are the best team, and that even looking at it from like a third party kind of perspective, I still believe it. Looking at our film versus the others, I do back us, and like we said, girls will have another year under the belt. We've got some very young players coming in, like QB1, for example. She'll have another year under the belt by the time she plays the next like international game, and she's mid-season for the Warriors now, and she's playing really well. Watching her at those games is terrifying for me when I have to play against her, but great to see on the other side of it. So yeah, it's just about us. And I've said it a few times, but I think for me, any team that I'm in, like, you've got to concentrate on yourself. Like, it's fine to scout, fine to do all those things, but if you actually concentrate on yourself and put that work in, then you're going to be the better team. So yeah, I think it is a case of that. And as individuals, trusting that they're doing the right thing. So keeping at the gym, and not thinking, oh, it's time to have a break, because we want to be hitting the ground running when we're coming back to training, and it's going to start really ramping up again towards the end of this year. And I want to be us, firing at 100% for a long time coming.
Yeah, and you mentioned a couple of great key points there. Kind of that complacency can be a killer, and that competition's key to keep people driving. Well, I say it's a while off yet, but best of luck. You won't need it, but best of luck in those last couple of games. Fingers crossed you'll get the job done. I'm sure you guys will. We talked a little bit about it last time, but I suppose one key part, not just for you, but for all the girls all the ladies on the team, is a sponsorship piece and support, because it can be very expensive, whether it's travel, equipment, so on. So I understand, of course, you're still kind of in the hunt for as much sponsorship as possible to help out. If anybody listening wants to get involved, where can they find you, Bethany?
So your best bet is to find me probably on Instagram. That's probably where I would say we're most active. I try and post a lot on there, but I forget sometimes. But you can find me on there. All my teams are on there. So my personal one is at Bethany Pilks, and then we've also got the Rams. So they'll be under Yorkshire Academy Rams and Leeds Chargers as well, and that's Leeds Chargers AF. So yeah, you can. There's loads of things that you can do to like help your local teams. Like, financially is probably key, especially for like individuals like myself, or people in my position. It like I said, it's so expensive. Like I wish it was paid. People ask me sometimes, and I'm like, God, I wish. We're paving the way to let that happen for future generations. But at the moment, no. But just any support that you can give to like any local teams is huge. Like, having supporters there is massive. Helping out, sharing social media posts, like just the smallest things that help you go a long way. And that's kind of how we've got in this position that we are now. So yeah, hit us up on Instagram. It's probably the best way, but we are all in other forms of social media, I'm sure.
If I remember, we had the discussion last time. Once we start getting some ad revenue in for the show, good teams with great teams cover will start helping. We're not there yet, but we're a lot closer than we were. So we're getting there. Before I let you go, I know again we had a little chat last time around you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan. Still don't like to say it, but it's okay. Philadelphia Eagles fan. That was kind of like pre-draft back in the start of April last time I had a discussion. Not too much has gone on in the off season for the NFL's a bit, once you kind of get past the draft, not too much else is going on. We're getting closer to the start of the season for 2023. How do you think your Philadelphia Eagles will do in 2023?
So I'm still going to be like a very typical Eagles fan, as much of an ick as it is, and say like we're going Super Bowl, baby. So yeah, I think we've not had that much change on the team. We were a damn good team last year. Should have won the Super Bowl. I think everyone can agree on that. So I'm feeling pretty confident going into it. You never know with the NFL, because you look at a team and you think, God, they're looking good, and then like just the flip happens. Or the Browns have sucked for so many years, and then somehow like they're actually doing all right. So it's so hard to say. But I'm feeling pretty confident. Kept QB1. That's the key thing, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, that was done to kind of get that contract done for Hurts was key. I think I'm inclined to agree with you. I think whether they win it or not, I don't know, but I think Philadelphia will be the team representing the NFC in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Partly because of how great they are, and they've had another great offseason with the draft, which they smashed again. And just the fact that the NFC is a little bit weak. outside of the 49ers, Dallas are kind of the next one down, and then everyone else is just a bit of a muchness. But whether they can go on and win it, I don't know, but we shall see. I think we'll probably get a rematch. Chiefs-Eagles rematch is kind of where
agreed.
So we shall see.
I
want to say best of luck to the Eagles, but I definitely can't do that. So sorry about that. Bethany, thanks ever so much for joining us on the show. I do appreciate you giving up your evening. I know you've got 1,001 other things to be doing, but I appreciate you taking your time and coming and having a chat with us.
No, thank you for having me. It was great speaking with you again.
All right, we'll catch you sometime soon, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.